Hello, everybody. This is Group 6, and this is our video presentation on robot process automation. Before we get started, though, let's meet the team. Hi, my name is Jane Urbistondo. I'm a commerce student majoring in information systems and business analytics. The rest of the team comprises of Chang Sern Kim, a computer science and accounting student, Dan Tra, conjoint engineering and commerce, Murray Freeth Edwards, computer systems postgraduate, Sad Siddiqui, Stephen Ho, and Xinyi Gu, who are Part 4 software engineering students. Now that we've met the team, let's get started. So, what process are we automating? Well, my group has decided to automate the gathering of client business data across different websites for the client onboarding process of PwC. Currently, when a client signs up with PwC, an employee often has to gather their business data across different sources, namely the company's register, Ilion, and Dun & Bradstreet. Now, this is a very time-consuming task, and at the end of the day, costs money. So what our group has done has actually developed a bot that gathers all the business data across these different websites and collate them into an Excel spreadsheet. But before we get to the fun part, we need to do a little analysis to see what the business requirements are. So just a few things to consider before moving forward with the project. First, who are our target users? Well, in our case, it's project managers and sales team employees. This is basically anybody that has anything to do with the onboarding process in PwC. Next, what are the benefits? Well, it speeds up the onboarding process. And this, in turn, creates a decrease in costs associated with onboarding clients because the time invested into actually doing this task is now allocated for something more productive. And what are the challenges? Well, first is the up-to-date company data on websites. These websites rely on the actual company to update their details. If they don't keep up with their details, it's hard to actually verify if it's up to date. Second, CAPTCHA verification. It's the enemy of all bots. And try as we might, we only figured this was a challenge when we actually tested the bot on the websites. Next is the terms and conditions of use. So there may not be a CAPTCHA verification in some of the websites, but when you use their services too much, they actually give you an error. So that's one of the challenges we had to face. And lastly, abbreviated company names. So this relies on the completeness of the data or the list of names that is given to the bot. If it's not correct, then it's not going to pick up any of the nuances. Now, let's have a little overview of what the current process is looking like. Currently, what you have is an Excel file with all the company names. So the employee has to go into the company's register to gather up all these information. Then they have to go to Ilion, which is to get their DUNS number. Then go to Dun & Bradstreet to grab these numbers and then have an output file of the compiled company data. It sounds like a lot of work. And considering if you have 16 or maybe 100 companies to go through, this will take a lot of time. So without further ado, let's see that bot in action. When you start up the bot, the first thing you'll notice is the Excel icon lighting up. And that's because the bot has entered Excel to grab the list of company names it has to collect. Next, it'll open up a browser for you and go into an NZ company's register, types in the first name, then does some filter and error checking while it's on this page. If there's an exact match, then it goes into another page. And this is where it grabs the office address. Once that's done, it heads on over to Ilion, where it'll grab the DUNS number, Once it's done with Ilian, heads on over to Dun& Bradstreet to grab the total number of employees and the annual revenue. When the bot is done searching up, you'll return back to UiPath and then go to the Excel spreadsheet where it originally took the list of company names. Down at the bottom, you'll notice two tabs, one containing company information. If there is nothing in those fields, then you'll have the error report explaining why. Exciting stuff, isn't it? Well, that's not where it ends. I have Stephen here on the other side to explain a little more on how our bot works.
Thanks, Jane. Now that we have a good understanding of how our automation runs, I'm going to give a more detailed overview on how our process actually works. The entire automation can be broken down into three modules: initializing, data collection, and data output. The first module invokes a single workflow, initialize data tables. This workflow has the responsibility of using the input Excel file to create a data table. This stores all the information, including errors, for the final output process that will be discussed later. Once the data table has been created, we had to remove surrounding white spaces that got generated around each company name. This process was again extracted into its own clean data workflow. The final step of the initialized data table workflow was to add the data columns. A single data column was created for each piece of information we wanted to collect from the different websites. Data columns were also created to keep track of any errors that occurred during the data collection process. The second module contains the bulk of the automation's work. This process was broken down into three further workflows, one for each website. The process followed within each website are actually quite similar. As seen in the project demonstration, the bot searches for each company in the respective websites. If a match is found, a further filtering process is made to ensure the company is currently registered and listed. As each website has a different interface, the process of data extraction varied from directly extracting the information from the search list to further navigating to subpages for the company, extracting the information, and then returning back to the search page. Whenever a process failed to extract a given piece of information for a company, the respective entry's data column for error handling was updated. The final workflow was outputting the data retrieved from the automation process. Given the two requirements of the project, the workflow was further split into two sections, one for the Excel spreadsheet and one for the error report. We decided to store all the data in the data table and write to the Excel file in a single action, rather than progressively editing the output Excel file after each individual piece of information was obtained. This decision was made to minimize the amount of writes made to the Excel file, allowing us to speed up the process significantly. Overall, the process was modularized as much as possible to ensure the automation process was of high quality. I will now pass it on to Saad, who will talk about the error logging aspect of the project.
Thank you, Stephen. Now we will briefly look at what error handling is and what kind of error prevention system has been implemented in our bot. Reporting errors is fundamental to error prevention. The purpose of error reporting is to help users and administrators to resolve the problems that the system encounters, either by helping to train the users to avoid mistakes or to help the administrators to get the system properly configured. In general, in computer programming, exception handling is the process of responding to the occurrence of exceptions. These exceptional conditions require special processing during the execution of a program. In most modern systems, there are three phases of error reporting involved. Catching errors is the first phase of error reporting. We need to consider and take care of all those scenarios that can cause errors. As our implementation is an automation bot that works on external systems, we need to handle all scenarios that may arise due to the change in the external system. The next phase is to handle those exceptions to allow our bot to run smoothly and complete its task without interruption or unexpected crashes. In case an exception is raised, we place specific instructions for the bot to follow and either move on to the next task or take another approach to complete the task at hand. The last phase of error reporting process is to log the errors that were encountered and include brief descriptions with a timestamp and put them in an Excel file. This will make it easier for the administrators and users to analyze these error encounters later on. A quick recap of the process followed by our bot is as follows. This will help you to better understand how it performs error handling in the automation process created to gather information about companies. It first goes to the NZ company's website to gather the information about the company name, the address, the company number, and the NZBN number. Then the browser is redirected to the Alien website to get the DUNS number of that particular company. And finally, after the process has completed, it logs any errors that were encountered in the entire process and puts them into a data table. The error reporting process implemented in the automation bot works as follows. For each website, the company register, and the alien, it searches for the company and waits for the results. Then it checks whether the company exists or not. If both conditions are false, which means that the bot is unable to determine if the company does and doesn't exist, then it might be a timeout error and it refreshes a page and logs it as a timeout error in the output log error file. It also logs if the company doesn't exist and logs a not found error and moves on to the next company. However, if the company does exist, then it continues with its normal operation and extracts the data for that particular company and moves on to the next one. Each error checking workflow outputs a Boolean, which is passed on to the main workflow based on which the next steps of the bot are executed.
So basically, we have finished all the required features mentioned in the project brief, but we are still considering the following aspects as our future directions. Firstly, our current implementation ran very slowly, so we aim to improve the overall velocity so that it can reduce the average time it takes for the process to execute. Secondly, we still need to focus on exception handling. This is because there might be some errors or changes that we didn't expect before. For example, we can set up an email alert for the development team so that they can quickly respond to that and resolve the problem as soon as possible. Lastly, we aim to extend our automation process. For example, the current input that we use is an Excel file that contains all the company names. So we can cover the actual inputting of clients if this process can be fully automated. It will help to improve the efficiency and maximize the value of this project.
Thank you, Xingyi. And that concludes our presentation. We hope that this has given you some insight towards our design process, and alongside all members of Team 6, we'd like to extend our gratitude for your attention.